Next, we will be reviewing worksheet number 3. This is going over gas transport. So just keep in mind with gas transport, whenever you hear the word concentration and whenever you hear the word pressure, concentration, okay, in that terms moves from a higher concentration to a place of lower concentration, just like with pressure. When you have a high concentration of gas in your atmosphere and a low concentration in your lungs, gas or oxygen will move from the atmosphere into your lungs. While if you have a high concentration in your lungs, so if you breathed in, you got a lot of concentration, a lot of pressure in your lungs, it will naturally move to lower concentration. So the only thing that changes really is how much pressure is in your lungs. So let's have a little bit of discussion. What happens in gas when it enters the body? Well, it chemically combines with other substances, and by this chemical combination, this has to do with your cells and how they use oxygen. So very important. Some gas also dissolves in plasma. Not very much, though. Actually, I think this is a question. Yeah, 98% of oxygen is not dissolved in plasma. So if we have a red blood cell has something on it called hemoglobin. And hemoglobin allows either oxygen to bind to it, or it allows carbon dioxide to bind to it. And this is all gas exchange. We're going to go through this. When oxygen binds to it, that's great. We want oxygen in our body. So usually your blood cell, this little guy, will go on a journey, I guess. He will start in your lungs, and he will get oxygen. Okay? He will then travel to your body cells. It's all right, we have body. He'll travel to your body cells. Oh, shoot, okay. Let's just do this. Okay. So your red blood cell is by your lungs, right? And it's going to take up oxygen because that's what hemoglobin does. And that's why your blood looks red, is because of hemoglobin. So this is going to travel from your lungs, and then eventually it's going to come in contact with your body cell. Your red blood cell will then give oxygen to your body cell, so your body cell can breathe. Also, in terms of your body cell can metabolize. It can break things down and build things up. Your body cell can work. Basically, your body cells eat oxygen, to say the least. So just like we eat food, we also excrete, not food, but, waste products. So carbon dioxide is a waste product. So your body cell will excrete carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide will bind to your hemoglobin. And then your blood will be known as deoxygenated. So it's deoxygenated. It has carbon dioxide bound to it. Your red blood cell will then, it will then leave your body cell. It will flow through the rest of your body, and eventually it'll come back to your lungs, where it will, oh my gosh, okay. It will get rid of carbon dioxide into your lungs. And then it will go out of your lungs, right? And how do we get rid of carbon dioxide? We breathe it out. So that's how it happens. We breathe in oxygen, travels through our body, and breathe out carbon dioxide because it's exchanged. So that's what gas exchange is, and that's what we're going to go through more in depth. So, okay. What makes up oxyhemoglobin? Two things do. Hemoglobin and oxygen, right there. Oxygen loosely binds to iron in the heme unit of each 4 polypeptide chains in hemoglobin, formed by oxyhemoglobin. One hemoglobin can bind to 4 molecules of oxygen. Chemical bonds between oxygen and hemoglobin are relatively unstable. And the reason why they're unstable is important, because then they can easily be, released. Kind of like, I should have erased it, but kind of how you saw it could easily be released. It didn't take very much. So the bonds are unstable. Fe, very important, it is iron. It is the chemical element of iron, Fe is. So number 5 is asking for you to make all the below statements true. Which factors increase the release of oxygen from hemoglobin? So oxygen is released from hemoglobin when there's an increase in carbon dioxide, when there is a decrease in oxygen, when there is an increase in temperature, and hemoglobin is also released when there is an increase in acidity. Because our bodies are naturally alkaline, we don't like being acidic. So acidity will cause hemoglobin to release oxygen very rapidly. So I'm just going to go through these rationales. Carbon dioxide is a waste product. We want to get rid of that, so our blood cells are going to release hemoglobin so they can uptake carbon dioxide. Oxygen, yeah, so there's that. For oxygen, if you don't have enough oxygen in your body, your red blood cell is going to release oxygen pretty dang fast. So if you have an increase in temperature, this causes oxygen release to be increased. And when you are acidic, the blood pH decreases, okay? That's something funny. Increased acidity equals decreased pH. Because acidity is a decrease. So PCO2 is also very acidic. So when you have an increase in acidity, when this increases, you can see, then oxygen is going to dissociate pretty dang fast. You're going to want to get rid of all your oxygen because oxygen will kind of help neutralize the situation. And when the red blood cell gets rid of oxygen, it can then take up carbon dioxide and then transport carbon dioxide through the blood system and out through the lungs, kind of like in the first picture. So number 6 is asking how much oxygen in venous blood, how much oxygen is venous blood saturated with? 75%. Yes, 75%. Even though venous blood, your veins, carries deoxygenated blood, about 75% of that blood still has oxygen on it. Actually, the color of our veins is actually blue, so that's what makes our blood look blue, but really it stays red. So you're going to hear, actually deoxygenated is a bad word for it. You're going to hear oxygen-rich blood, which is in your arteries, and then oxygen-poor blood. So oxygen-rich blood is 100% oxygen, but oxygen-poor blood is 75% oxygen, which is in your venous blood. But it's quite a bit. 75% is a lot. So going through this, when hemoglobin becomes saturated, what does the oxygen combine with? Well, when hemoglobin becomes saturated, oxygen combines with iron, also known as Fe. How much more? Let's see. All right, one more page. A couple more until we get into that. So which statement is false? This is true. Hemoglobin in the lungs become 100 saturated with oxygen. True. More oxygen will combine with hemoglobin if the environment has higher oxygen. True. Because we have more oxygen out here, more oxygen is going to come into our body and bind. That's true. Oxygen dissociation will be greater if the blood is concentrated with carbon dioxide. That is true. Because our oxygen is going to want to dissociate if we have high carbon dioxide. The false statement, this is false. High blood pH will promote dissociation of hemoglobin. False. High blood pH does not. It is a low pH that promotes the dissociation of oxygen from hemoglobin. So hopefully that makes sense, because acidity would make a low pH. And you can look through the explanations. Number 9, Fun fact, at high altitudes, proportion of oxygen drops. This is true. This is false. The proportion of oxygen stays the same, but what changes is the pressure. The pressure of oxygen becomes lighter, so there's still an equal amount of oxygen, but because it's lighter, then the pressure isn't so different and it's harder for us to breathe naturally. What is false of carbon monoxide? Well, let's go through the true statements. You can die from it. Carbon monoxide occurs when CO2 is difficult to dissociate from hemoglobin. So when carbon dioxide, when you can't get it off your hemoglobin because your body is so much saturated with it since you've been breathing in it so much, that's carbon monoxide. And carbon monoxide occurs when carbon dioxide or CO2 binds to hemoglobin more readily than oxygen. And this happens when there's just more CO2 available for you to breathe. However, carbon monoxide can be treated with a high amount of oxygen. You want oxygen to treat carbon monoxide. That is the cure. So number 11, why does carbon dioxide diffuse out of the tissue and into capillaries? I'm going to draw this up here. So our tissues are going to be, I guess, green. Okay, these are our green tissues, our green body cells, okay? So the question is asking, why does CO2 diffuse out of the tissues and into the capillaries? Okay? If our tissues contain a lot of CO2, okay, things are going to go, and there's just a little bit of CO2 in here. Things are going to go from a high concentration to a low concentration. So high amounts of CO2 are then going to go into the blood capillary. Okay? CO2, 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 CO2. Okay? Because the tissues have a higher, because the tissues have a higher concentration of CO2 in them. The next question, or the next statement is, because the capillaries have a lower concentration of PCO2 in them. Because in the capillaries, you only had just a little bit, right? And then all this had to come in. So stuff goes from a high concentration to a low concentration, as always, with gases, with chemicals, with everything. So that's the key. How is the majority of carbon dioxide transported to the lungs then? Carbon dioxide is transported to the lungs mainly as bicarbonate ion. So this is when, and this is the beef of this worksheet. I know, right? Is it over? Is it over? Will it ever be over? No worries. So how do I want to color code this? Okay, so you have carbon dioxide, CO2, plus, actually, yeah, we'll make water green. H2O will then go into H2CO3. This is called carbonic acid. So as you know, CO2 is carbon dioxide, CO3 carbonic acid, and this is water. This is carbon dioxide. Carbonic acid will then turn into hydrogen ion. Hydrogen ion. And as well as, oh, what is that? Oh, that's nice. Bicarbonate ion. So, HCO3 minus is bicarb. So you got the carb in there again. And something to keep in mind, oh, my battery is running low. Oh, that can't be good. Did that work? Nice, okay. Something to keep in mind is whenever you see the word ion, ions have charges in them. So H plus, hydrogen ion. HCO3 minus, bicarbonate ion. To just know. So this next portion, number 13, pretty much summarizes these next 2 pages. What is the sequence of carbon dioxide transport? You know, also known as, AKA, how do we get carbon dioxide out of the body? So we're going to start with we're going to have this equation, but we're going to start this whole process with the red blood cell. So I'm going to erase this, but it's good to have this equation sitting out in front of you so you can see what I'm talking about. So we're going to start, this is your blood, okay? You're going to start in the red blood cell, okay? So your red blood cell is going to take up CO2 from the plasma. So plasma being the fluid portion, CO2 is going to be taken up. So that's your red blood cell, CO2 is going to come in. Oh shit, shoot. I'm gonna make this bigger. Hello, red blood cell. So you're gonna have CO2 in here. CO2, so your blood cells, because they're kind of spongy and they're buoyant and they're nice, your red blood cells naturally have water in them. So carbon dioxide is gonna combine with water, and this is gonna form, let me pull this a little closer. Hopefully that helps. Okay. So, you know, you have your CO2. CO2 is going to combine with water that's naturally inside your red blood cell, because that's why your red blood cells are kind of circular. It gives them their shape. And then this is going to combine to form carbonic acid. So this is going to be H2CO3, carbonic acid. Okay? Which is nice, right? Carbonic acid. But, you know, we don't really want that. So I'm just going to read through this really fast. CO2 diffuses from the blood plasma into the red blood cell, which happens here. Inside the red blood cell, carbon dioxide will then combine with water to form carbonic acid. So as you can see, carbonic acid is formed. This is kind of fun fact. The enzyme carbonic anhydrase glues carbon dioxide and water together. So that's what has this equation, you know, CO2 plus H2O, kind of the one I had up here, forms H2CO3. This plus sign, think about that plus sign being like the glue that holds it together. And this is carbonic anhydrase enzyme. And it kind of glues them together. So they come together and they form carbonic acid, which is nice, I guess. So after carbonic acid is formed, it will then split because it doesn't want to be carbonic acid for some reason. So still inside the red blood cell, carbonic acid will then split apart. It will dissociate, is another word for split. It'll split apart to form hydrogen ion and bicarbonate. So bicarbonate is HCO3 minus. It's an ion, hence the minus sign. And then you will have hydrogen, which is H plus ion. So that's what forms this part of the equation. So we're going to take this, H2CO3, carbonic acid will then split into hydrogen ion and bicarbonate ion. So right, these are ions. The word ion. Okay. So that is that. So I'm going to erase this really fast so we can have things. So goodbye carbon dioxide and water. Goodbye carbonic acid. So once this splits, and how far does this video? Okay. Yeah. So you're just basically going to read that equation from left to right. You're going to read CO2 plus H2O turns into H2CO3, which is carbonic acid, and then you're going to read carbonic acid turns into bicarbonate ion and hydrogen ion. So that is the first step, and this happens all inside the red blood cell. And the red blood cell could be really anywhere in the body when this happens. So next we're going to go to the blood, from the red blood cell to the plasma. So bicarbonate ion, although it's kind of homey, doesn't really like it in there. So bicarbonate ion is going to diffuse out of the red blood cell. So bicarbonate, oh, I shouldn't circle it. Yeah, so it's just bicarbonate ion. It's just going to diffuse out. Okay? And into the blood plasma. Okay. If bicarbonate ion leaves the red blood cell, it needs to be replaced. The next question asks, which ion enters the red blood cell when bicarbonate ion leaves the red blood cell? Circle the correct ion that replaces bicarbonate in the red blood cell. This is chloride, okay? This is known as the chloride shift. So bicarbonate, I'll show it a little bigger, HCO3 minus, okay? It's an ion, right? However, our blood cell, if we lose something positive, if we lose something negative, our body wants it to be neutral. So if we lose something negative, our red blood cell is going to become too positive, and we can't be having that. We need them to be bitter, I guess. So what happens is when a negative ion leaves, it needs to be replaced by another negative ion. So the chloride is Cl minus. This is known as chloride shift. Chloride shift. So chloride just, is random, just kind of circulates in the blood as it is, along with many other things. But when bicarbonate leaves, chloride must go in because they're both negative, and you have to replace a negative once you lose one. So that is chloride shift. And then this leftover little guy, hydrogen ion, it'll just combine with hemoglobin. It's cool where it is. It's all right with life for the most part. But yeah, so when bicarbonate leaves, chloride shift occurs because they're both negative ions, and it needs to be replaced. That is the second step. Okay? So I'm going to erase this chloride stuff, but know that chloride's still in there. It's right there, so it's chilling out. You're out because you moved out. You cannot come back to this household once you leave it. Okay, so bicarbonate ion leaves. So now we have traveled throughout the body with this red blood cell on his journey, and we are now at the lungs. So now we're going to move from the plasma to the lung capillary. So I know I'm putting a space here, but that's just for the sake of a space. This is the lung capillary. Yeah, okay. You get the point. So plasma, okay. So bicarbonate ion and hydrogen ion enter. So at some point in time, okay, hydrogen ion is combined, but once it comes in contact with the lung, bicarbonate ion, okay, let's restart. Okay, so you have a capillary here, you have a capillary here. Oh, look, fellow red blood cell, hey. So bicarbonate ion that is floating around in this plasma, in the liquid portion, bicarbonate ion will then come over here. Let's go up here. And it's a lot of red. And you'll have HCO3 minus, okay? Hydrogen will be sick of hemoglobin for some reason, and it'll flow out too, and it doesn't have to be replaced because it does this temporary, and then it'll come over here. So hydrogen and carbon and bicarbonate, hydrogen ion and bicarbonate ion will then form carbonic acid, right? Like over here, this is carbonic acid, and it's split. Now inside this lung capillary, it's going to combine, okay? And it's going to form carbonic acid, H2CO3. Okay? Carbonic acid, let's go with this. Once the two ions are in the red blood cell, they will combine to form carbonic acid. Carbonic acid then splits apart. So this is our carbonic acid, right? We are now going to split to form water, right? And water is just going to stay inside the cell and make it kind of chill and give it that nice shape, okay? It's going to split apart to form water, and guess what else? Carbon dioxide, right? And once we have carbon dioxide, it then leaves the lung, or pulmonary means lung. Carbon dioxide is going to leave the pulmonary capillary and go out of the body. It's going to exit. So when that happens, so literally this whole process is, it's us breathing. I mean, that's amazing, right? We start out with carbon dioxide. We change everything out, form bicarbonate ion, have this whole change happen again, finally form carbon dioxide once again, just to breathe it out. And that is because this carbon dioxide is coming from body cells. It is the waste from body cells. I probably should have explained that sooner. So, I mean, that is amazing. How our body cells get rid of carbon dioxide, how our red blood cells pick up carbon dioxide, convert carbon dioxide into bicarbonate ion, and then how our pulmonary capillary, our lung capillaries, convert bicarbonate ion into carbon dioxide once again, just for us to breathe it out. So this is how carbon dioxide leaves the body. And it's pretty crazy. I may redraw this for the sake of simplicity. But yes, this concludes our thing. So when you look at your equation, right, the CO2 plus H2O, you're now going to read this from right to left because we are now converting carbon dioxide back into carbon dioxide over here. So that is that. Take care and pleasant studies.